Hello and welcome to today's historic Best of 3 deck tech and gameplay video on Orzhov Reanimator. Orzhov Reanimator is a pretty simple list. It's one of those, the further you go back in Magic's history, format-wise, these types of decks have always existed as the card pool gets big enough and the quality of cards get big enough to allow them to exist. The deck, at its core, early on, wants to fill its graveyard with cards like Stitch's Supplier, Corpse Churn, and Bitter Triumph. Wants to use these cards to fill its graveyard, ideally with either our Griselbrand, Atraxa, or Sarah's Emissary. And once these cards are in the bin, we want to reanimate them ideally on turn 3, which you can do with Priest of Fell Rites or a single copy of Victimize, sometimes, or even, say, turn 4 with an Unburial Rites. And once you reanimate these really big, 7+ cost cards, 7+ cost, big scary cards. Once you manage to cheat them out early, you want to take that tempo that you've gained from, skipping 4 or 5 turns, basically, to translate that into just a whole lot of damage into your opponent's face, as all of these creatures are, pretty big and pretty scary on their own. Granted, they're all good at different things beyond just being big, scary creatures. And that is honestly the basics of the list. There's not a whole lot to it. You run, you fill your bin with stuff, reanimate the stuff using your reanimate tools. The earlier the better, and then you just beat your opponent up with the big scary thing. And with cards like Sarah's Emissary, and even Griselbrand and Atraxa gaining you card advantage, and the Emissary gaining you protection, you just want to, beat your opponent up until either you lose or they lose. Very simple. Land base also, again, very, very simple. Just, running good black and white lands that come into play untapped in the early turns. Pretty simple. We do have a few mana confluences, which are not strictly necessary, but I have them should we need to, say, in a post-board game, need to cast, say, an Atraxa legit. It's nice to have a way to be able to generate the blue and the green mana, and Mana Confluence allows you to do that, as well as just being pretty good, mana fixing. And we do have a couple forms of tech lands, old Takanuma and Iganjo, and even, a couple little bits of, tech lands here and there, but those are honestly not the stars of the show. They're just nice ways to sort of bring the floor up and increase the overall quality of the deck. Sideboard, also, very easily explained, just usually a whole bunch of silver bullet kind of cards. Tainted Remedy for opposing life gain decks, as those are always very popular in the format. Witch's Vengeance against the tribal, or what's the term? I think typal now. But basically, sorry, I'm going to say tribal. I apologize if it's not the in vogue term. It's just it's the term I'm used to in my brain. Anywho, if your opponent's playing, like elves or merfolk or humans or any sort of particular creature type, Witch's Vengeance is good for that. Cleansing Nova is a more general board sweeper if you need it, as Witch's Vengeance can only deal with a board so large, where Cleansing Nova will just get rid of it all. And also being able to destroy all artifacts and enchantments are more useful than you would think, as you'll occasionally run into some weird green-white enchantment list or some affinity style artifact thing. You will use the second mode on Cleansing Nova more than you would think. Shamil, the Inner Sun, one of those cards you bring in against decks that have a whole lot of counter magic. Anything from, blue-white controls, the occasional Dimir, rogue, flashy thing. Fatal Push for some more creature removal. Lion Sash for opposing graveyard hate. Despark for getting rid of big, scary permanents that will, run away with the game if left unchecked. And a couple Necromancias for any sort of particular combos that we're scared about, or, really linchpin cards that we just need to get rid of. Necromancia is a good way of doing this, although if you at home don't have Necromancia, there are other versions of cards like this that will basically let you name a card and get rid of that card from your opponent, more or less. So if you don't have Necromancia and you have one of the other ones, use that. It's totally fine. I just happen to like Necromancia. Anywho, and that is the basics of the list. Don't forget to like the video if you like it, subscribe if you like my grab bag of content and would like to see more in the future, And if you have any sort of, generally nice and or constructive comments, leave them down in the comments below, and I'll do what I can to respond to what I see. With all that out of the way, we'll go on now to game number 1. And game number 1 with our little Orzhov Reanimator. And this is a fine opener. We have not only 1-drops, but we also have a Stitcher's Supplier, which will help us to start filling up our graveyard pretty early. It would be nice if we had an actual reanimation tool, but this is a good enough opener that we're not going to, like a Priest of Felrites. I was going to say, it was good enough that we're just going to take a win, even if it's not the best. But we drew into something really good. Anywho, now we'll play the Supplier on turn 1. Hopefully we hit something big in the graveyard, like an Atraxa. And, which I believe I mentioned in the deck tech, provided your opponent, doesn't interact or doesn't get rid of, like in this case will be our Priest of Felrites, we will be able to reanimate an Atraxa on turn 3, which is a really, really big, tempo swing and just a big, scary threat that most decks cannot deal with. Anywho, Priest of Felrites. Yeah, go ahead and attack with the Stitcher Supplier. Why not? There's an argument to both. There's an argument to. That's nice. To blocking with their Vampire of the Dire Moon, but I think granted they don't. Okay, I was gonna say the Death Touch blocker would be good against my big scary board, ignoring the flying part of that. But once they played the Abiding Grace, now I know why they did it. Anywho, with all that out of the way, there's not a whole lot of special things to do. Just going to go ahead and Priest of Felrites, getting back one of our Atraxa Grand Unifiers. Draw a buttload of cards. The best part is, let's see what we draw here. We'll take an Unburial Rites. We'll take a Seat of the Empire in case we need some more removal. Bitter Triumph will be just fine. And I guess another Priest of Felrites. My original, what I was going to say is that normally it would suck to have to discard cards to a really big Atraxa pool, but we're in a Reanimator list, so we can always just throw away cards like our Sarah's Emissary, which we want in the graveyard anyway. Anywho, play another Priest of Felrites, get it loaded up, and I guess play an Esper Sentinel. It's a fine body and might draw me some cards. Now, we could have, all of that earlier being said to the whole, oh, we don't mind overdrawing, so we can, just pitch our stuff to the yard. Yes, but we're doing good enough now that, we don't need to overly rush. We did the thing. We reanimated a big scary body on turn 3. Let's not, push our luck while we're ahead. Also, there is something to be said about keeping information about what I am gonna, potentially anyway, reanimate to a minimum. Now, they might, if they're an experienced player and playing older formats, or at least somewhat knowledgeable about older formats in much the same way that I am, Atraxa Grand Unifier and Gristlebrand are really popular things to reanimate, just because at the worst, you're gonna draw cards off of them early on. Not to mention, it's just a big scary body. Oh god, what? Okay. Our opponent's deck is weird. I don't know why my brain just short-circuited there. To the point where I forgot what I was talking about, which is lovely. In that case, I apologize for... what was my point? Anywho, we'll play a Caves. We're going to go ahead and Bitter Triumph, discarding our Sarah's Emissary. And maybe the point will come back to me as I'm doing this. Man, it's not coming back to me. That's really unfortunate. Anywho, it was something to the extent of, while it is nice to hold back, some sorts of information or knowledge, also, if you do vomit a particularly large board, in my experience, we'll name creatures, or, no, probably instants. It's the safest. There is something to be said about just, vomiting out a big board. Yes, they could, in theory, especially in Orzhov, have a board wipe this turn. And if they do, it like kind of sucks, but we don't mind if our board gets swept. We can just play a Priest of Fell Rites and go again. Also, it's nice to have, you know, a Bitter Triumph to just freely get rid of a Shieldred just so I don't even have to deal with the damn thing. I guess, yeah, land is fine. We're going to win next turn basically anyway, so... Or damn near going to win next turn, I should say. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That broke my brain. Anywho. I was gonna say, like, I thought maybe they were like a Vampires deck, like an Orzhov, which works, but then the Abiding Grace didn't make sense. And then there's a Shieldred, so I think it's just like a Orzhov-y mid-range good stuff kind of list. And when my brain... to give an insight why that sort of short-circuited my brain, I'm like running down the list of like possible... or what I perceive anyway. It's also fantastic hand. What I perceive to be the most likely outcome of any given like matchup and where I need to go. And after like 3 or 4, because it wasn't vampires, so that got knocked off. And then it wasn't like a life gain thing, that got knocked off because the Shieldred's kind of weird. Or I guess it still could be. But after like the 3rd effect, my brain was like, didn't know what to make of the deck, and it short-circuited my brain entirely. Anywho, like we talked about, totally fine hand, very good one. Again, do a Stitcher Supplier. We did not draw a Priest of Fell Rites, which is not great, but yeah, you know, what are you going to do? If nothing, next turn we can always just play a Mana Confluence, play an Esper Sentinel, and a Defector Might Skrelv, or however you pronounce it. And just setting up for... that's something. And just setting up for like an okay board. Because, I mean... I will be honest, the majority of the time you are going to win with your big, scary, reanimated creatures, like your Sarah's Emissaries. But there are moments like this, you can apply some damage with a board of just, you know, little tiny support creatures that sort of make the whole thing go round. Now, none of these cards are like, you know, terribly great, but they all work pretty well for what our deck... for what our deck wants to do. Earlier on, how I talked about my brain short-circuiting. My brain was still, and how I talked about the individual things I thought it might be, how first I thought it was a Vampires deck, then I thought it was Life Gain, and it didn't appear to be either one of those things. My brain, subconsciously, which I didn't say at that moment, was still holding on to some weird Life Gain thing, but then this fucking Ghostly Prison is just like, okay, it's a pile of cards. In moments like this, I can't make any informed decision. So, we're just going to Corpse Churn. Maybe we hit something, maybe we don't. Kinda doesn't matter. Go ahead and do a Stitcher Supplier. Bring that back with the Corpse Churn. A great little card for recursion. And just fill up our bin. Because I believe there was... is there something in there worth... there's not anything in there yet worth my time. Oh, right, I can't. Sure. Yeah, we haven't drawn anything super terribly special. Or not, well, drawn / put into the graveyard. Is it like a Death and Taxes thing? Their deck is all over the goddamn place. It is... why? Okay, that's fine. That's a generically fine creature. Sure. That fucked my brain up. I guess we can do a Mana Confluence. And then we can play the Takenuma. Maybe mill something useful. Okay, we didn't, but we can get back a Stitcher Supplier, which again gives us just another chance of getting something generally big and scary. Credit given to our opponent's board. Hey, there's Natraxa. To our opponent's board state, I should say. We can't reasonably expect to win with our little board of small, dirtily, like, enabler creatures. But, you know, we can pay through a ghostly prison if all we have to do is animate us, or if all we manage to do is reanimate a single Atraxa. Now, it'll take a long-ass time, yes. But it's like, fine. Okay. That's fine. That's a lot. Weirdly, if he attacks... This might seem like a weird block, but I'm actually going to double block with both of these Stitcher Suppliers just to fill up the bin. Because I would love to find, like a Sarah's Emissary, or just something kind of big and scary where I can name creatures and feel a little less apprehensive about my life total. There we go. That's honestly, like, pretty beautiful. We will do the Unburial rites, reanimating a Sarah's Emissary, and we will name creatures so we can block a little more freely. Again, even if we could attack, at this point we more value the blocker than anything. If I have protection from creatures and the creature has trample, does all the damage just go to my face? You're gonna pay the one. Pays the one. I mean, I guess we'll find out. But okay, I have protection from the creature, so the damage wouldn't go through anyway. I answered my own question. I didn't think far enough ahead. Anywho, and with this second Unburial rites, reanimating an Atraxa, should give me a sufficiently large hand that we're gonna be fine. We'll grab a Gristlebrand, grab a Skrelv, creature and artifact. Grab another Unburial rites, and a Corpse Churn, and then like a Pathway. And that should be, you know, drawing 5 off of one creature is not bad. Okay. Go ahead and attack with... I can't attack with the Emissary. I have to pay the cost, right. We will get rid of the Gristlebrand and one of the Sarah's Emissaries. Just giving us some more graveyard fuel. Now, next turn, we're not going to attack with anything, Max. Remember, they have a ghostly prison for reasons. Okay, I'm going to block just in case, but none of this damage should go through, right? I should be unchanged. I mean, I think I still take damage, but I think the damage becomes 0 or some shit like that. They're drawing cards. Right? It does go through. That is good to know, but it becomes 0. Cool. My thought process was sated. Do we care? I don't know if I care. Yeah, let's go ahead and attack with the Sarah's Emissary and the Atraxa. Happily pay the 4 mana. Getting us a whole bunch of life. And largely putting the game out of reach for our opponent. I guess we can get rid of the other Sarah's Emissary. If they have Graveyard Hate, like, yeah, it'd suck, but we kind of already have the nuts on the board. So it really, well, it would suck. It wouldn't suck that bad. What's that card? Maybe it is some weird, like, enchantment, Stethan Taxi stacks thingy. Cast a spell, there's 5 left, there's got a card, which is, that's fine. Okay. Maybe that's what their deck was, and they're just you have to run weird cards in this format to make them. Anywho, attacking with our big scary board of reanimated things, reanimated above the curve, and like I said, we bring them down to 0. Deck is really pretty simple and a lot of fun. Pretty explosive, but also if your opponent, you know, draws their hate pieces, which any good deck in an Eternal format should have some graveyard hate, you're going to be in for a rough time. But a lot of times, you'll get wins like this. And like you'll see, depending on how next game goes, I might even, you know, rank up to Diamond with this list, which is pretty nice for a Reanimator list, since Historic hasn't really had one for like a while. The closest thing is we had like Jeskai Indomitable Creativity that would like cheat into play cards like a Sarah's Emissary, but I don't know why that deck fell off. But anyway, hopefully this particular Reanimator list will replace it. Anywho, with that out of the way, we're on now to game number 2. And game number 2 with our little Orzhov Reanimator list, and this is an awful hand. It's a one-lander. That is much, much better. Probably just throw back the Esper Sentinel, because we're basically there. Ooh, equipment. Okay, we're doing good. Would love to find some, you know, not Corpse Churn, but the Bitter Triumph card. Some way to get the big scary things out of our hand would be nice, and into the graveyard. Okay, some like Boros equipment list. I get that. I've done that. It is a lot of fun. Probably Sword of X and Y. More than really Shadow Spear. Okay. Play another Stitcher Supplier. If we can't manage to get the things out of our hands naturally, we can always hope to just, you know, hit cards like a Priest of Fell Rites or an Unburial Rites and just naturally mill something into our graveyard that way. Granted, not the most exciting, but what are you gonna do? I guess we'll go ahead and do a Palantir. Palantir of Ornthak, or whatever. It might seem like a weird card, but it's a nice little mix of our card draw engine as well as, in theory, like a tool to like fill our graveyard. We don't need either of these. It's honestly like a really good card. Yeah, it's a good card in this list because either they, you know, they let us draw a card continually, or we both mill things and hurt whatever the mana value is worth of things we mill, which if we're milling big things, like old 8-cost Gristlebrand or 7-cost Atraxa, also happily double block here, are not only going into our graveyard to be reanimated, but they're big costs. Oh, that's fair. Did we just die? Okay. Jesus, he's already dead. Stop the damn match. Okay. But yeah, my point was going to be that it's nice because sometimes we can just blow up our opponent with not even the creature itself, but the actual cost of the creature. But then sometimes you run into a list like this, which kind of beats you to the punch. Jesus! Good on them. God damn. In that case, Fatal Pushes are coming in. Skrelves are pretty useless. The deck is pretty linear and doesn't super want to like spend time interacting. Yeah, honestly, I think that's kind of just it. There's an no. None of the equipment he's going to get is above 4 cost, really. We have a whole bunch of Swords of X and Y and like cards like even Sigarda's Age 1 mana. Yeah, we'll just swap out the Skrelves for some Fatal Pushes and just hope we have the interaction. Credit again to our opponent. It is not often that a deck can sort of pop off as fast as we can, but like it's pretty interesting when it does. This is awesome. We have things to do. We will go ahead and play the Esper Sentinel. They can't do that much early on. Okay, doing good. Pathway on white, playing a priest here. Now, if all things go well and they don't run a lot of interaction like I imagine they will, I can always, next turn, get rid of whatever creature they happen to play, provided they play one, with a Bitter Triumph, pitching our Sarah's Emissary into the bin, then we can then reanimate it with the priest, giving us protection from creatures, which should, fingers crossed, be enough to like largely lock out the game, as I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of interaction beyond that. All of that being said, let's give it a whirl. Pathway on black, Bitter Triumph, discarding a card. They played any creature, so it was going to go. Discarding Sarah's Emissary. The only thing he's going to be able to get rid of is the Esper Sentinel, which is fine. We'd rather have that than be miles ahead. Priest of Fell Rites, animating a Sarah Emissary. giving me and creatures I control protection from creatures. And that's one of those, in a weird, counterintuitive way, the biggest thing I'm concerned about going against an equipment list is not the equipments, but the creatures they're attached to. Because if they don't have any creatures to attach to, doesn't mean a damn thing. And now, this Fatal Push is going to come in absolute clutch, getting rid of their only board. I didn't even read the card. What does it do? I never played with this card. This card, or another cat, enters the battlefield. Attach one target equipment you control to that creature. Creatures 1/1. Make a cat. Cool. That would have sucked. Yeah. Just play a tower. Start bonking in the head. Now, we don't need to be as gun-shy, or as, like, not gun-shy, as precautious as we were beforehand. Because he can't get rid of us with any creature right now. So it's better to just keep the Triumph. Keep it for some sort of... in response to some sort of, like, maybe they have some white, like, you know, destroy target creature effect thing, which would be very possible. Ganjo's pretty good. So we're going to keep that in hand. Play the Takenuma. And again, just go ahead and attack. If he goes to remove it with like a white-based destroy effect, which I imagine is what he's hovering over. If he manages to get rid of the Emissary, we, in response, get rid of it with a Bitter Triumph. We'll probably wait till the end of our turn, if he has it. But we're feeling pretty good and in control. This is really, honestly, two pretty fast... Again, creature, totally fine. This is like two pretty fast lists, just looking to see who manages to slip under, like, defenses first. Granted, you know, if you're on the play, it's going to be great, which makes me scared for Game 3. Because even if we win this one, they're going first in the last game. And literally that extra turn might be, like, all they need to slip under and, you know, do things before I can. Okay, we're attaching it. If you were to destroy it, right, it doesn't matter. Let me rephrase that. If he has the removal spell now, then I think I die. But he doesn't appear to have it. We're doing alright. And this will be... Hi, baby girl. Shy of some sort of white-based removal spell, which they should have used during/before combat. What? I think we can count this as a win. Do you want to come hang out with Dad, even though your sister's hanging out on the chair behind me? You're in front of the screen, goofball. Get the fuck out of here. It was fucking Okay. Okay, now I see. I'm not even mad. What? Oh, yeah, he has to. We're good. Oh, no, I died. Right. The other 14 was from... Okay, that was really well done. I had totally even forgotten that Fling was a card. I thought I was free because I was only thinking about the initial Fireblade Chargers death effect thing. I then forgot there was another 14 damage coming at my face from the Fling. That was fantastic. And honestly, like, that's pretty fair for the list. I would record if I had more time, but it's one of those I don't have a whole lot of time. And honestly, these two matches were pretty fair and straightforward. Sometimes, you know, you pop off like we did in Game 1 and slip under. And sometimes your opponent manages to, you know, be a little faster or more quick than you are. To be fair, and one of the reasons why I'm keeping this particular game in the video and letting the video be this low, and I've talked about this in both Hearthstone and Hearthstone and in Magic decks. We got in like the ideal situation for what is at its core an aggressive deck. We got to a point where if they did not have the Fling that killed us, we were gonna kill them with a Sarah's Emissary and win. It's one of those. It's right up to the edge, basically. You know, a photo finish, damn near, for lack of a better term. And they just happened to have it. You know. welcome to playing somewhat aggressive creature-based decks. So yeah, sometimes you're going to get right up to it and lose. But it's still fun and a good time to be had. Anywho, oh, hi, sweetheart. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video if you like it. Subscribe if you like my grab bag of content and would like to see more in the future. And if you have any sort of questions, like I don't have X, what about Y, or other generally nice and or constructive comments, I'll do what I can to respond to what I see. Thank you all so much for watching. And, you know, just be nice to one each other, don't be a jerk, and stay cool out there, since it's getting hotter out there, I should say. Bye-bye.